Hello to my water signs, Cancer, Scorpio and Pisces. Welcome to the Capricorn full moon. You'll find the timestamps for your rising signs listed below. Hello Cancer Rising, welcome to your reading for the Capricorn full moon happening very soon, this Sunday, the 21st of July at 8:19 p.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. First up, straight up, off the bat, I'm so sorry that I've been away. It's been a month, and if you're anything like me, you've grown used to this ritual, and I got really sick. I had a fever, and I dropped my phone on the train, and everything just sort of fell into chaos, and things were occurring all around me, and I just had to stop. I just had to kind of embody the Cancer parts of me and try and take care of myself as best I could, try and listen to what my body was telling me that I needed, which was pause. So on that though, I missed some really pivotal parts of your astrology. I missed the Cancer new moon on the 6th of July. I missed the first Capricorn full moon on the 22nd of June. But the good news is we get a go-over in some sense. Every so often, there's a lunation in the same sign, so there's a repetition, there's a repeat, and looking at your birth chart, looking at Cancer in the first house, your soul's rising intention, and then looking over to Capricorn in your 7th house, the house of other people and your relationships, there's a lovely conversation that's sort of been ongoing for us in these two parts of your chart. And this full moon on the 21st of July feels like an absolute culmination. It's occurring at the 29th degree of Capricorn, and there's the 0 degrees and the 29th degree of each sign are pivotal moments. They do feel like a gateway opening at 0 degrees and the journey beginning, and at 29 degrees it feels like journey's end. And so thinking about your relationships and the way that you have been relying on other people, or perhaps the way that you've been witnessing the culmination of relationships, this full moon is going to provide a beautiful, safe space for you to feel what you need to feel. I almost want to say to you, congratulations. At the end of all of this, you've come to this moment right here, right now, and it feels really powerful. It feels really potent. Now, on that topic of 0 degrees and 29 degrees both being pivotal moments on the zodiac, this full moon is kind of in conjunction with Pluto, which is at 0 degrees of Aquarius, the sign next over. So they're working together in some sense. They're in different signs, but they're so close that we kind of bring in the thematics or the language around Pluto too into this moon. Pluto, we know, is the harbinger of destruction. In mythology, Pluto is the lord of the underworld. So is the protector of everything that is hidden, will often bring things up from beneath the surface in order to be looked at. And so when thinking about relationship styles and thinking about your intimacies, I wonder if there's been some huge moments that have been unearthed for you over the last month since I've been gone. Looking at that polarity in that month of my absence, there has been hopefully a moment on the 6th of July where you could start to plant some seeds for yourself as opposed to other people. And prior to that, on the 22nd of June, perhaps this lunation, this full moon in Capricorn, was an instigator. So for this month, we've really have to be tender and available to what is changing in the way that we relate to other people. Now, along with all of that astrology about the moon, and obviously as a Cancer rising, you know what to do with the moon, so I won't labor you with instructions. I know that you're going to get out there underneath the light of this moon and allow yourself to be bathed in its glow. I know you're going to enjoy that intimacy with the moon as you think about your intimacies with other folks. I also know that energetically, if we sort of zoom out from your birth chart alone and look at the world stage and look at the general feeling amongst your fellow human beings, there is an unrest that is palpable. It feels like a very conscious heartbeat, or you're very aware of the heartbeat of the moment. It's quick moving. It's really, really anxious. And so the astrology that we're sort of moving through, there was a really explosive moment with Mars that represents our rage, and Uranus, which represents a revolt of sorts. They came together in Taurus on the 16th of this month, so earlier this week. And on your birth chart, Cancer, that's your 11th house. That's your sense of community and friendship, and your sense of belonging, your humanitarian spirit. I think so many folks that have a very highly aware humanitarian spirit can feel those tremors, and have been feeling those tremors specifically for nearly 12 months. There has been a tension that feels like a tight drum, and we can almost feel that beat that's been going on. That explosive moment occurred. There's something else that we're moving into as well, which has to do with Jupiter, which is in Gemini, and with Saturn, that is in Pisces. So in mythology, Saturn is the father of Jupiter, and the story, the sort of Genesis story in ancient texts goes that Saturn was lord of the Titan gods. So there was a whole other suite of deities that existed pre-Zeus, pre-Jupiter, the Olympians. But there was a prophecy told that Saturn's children would overthrow him in power, and so he ate them all. There's a Goya painting which depicts that really clearly. It's frightening to look at, also a little bit pathetic. And then as the mythology moves along, it comes to a moment where Jupiter is protected by his mother, and so doesn't get eaten, and then comes of age, and then comes to Saturn for a reckoning and forces him to vomit them all up. Feels pretty familiar, wouldn't you say? This old guard, old world, old power dynamic that is on the tip of everyone's tongue, no matter if you're into astrology or into spirituality or mythology. You could be as atheist and as pragmatic as you want to be. These topics, this mythology, is being spoken of right now. So many folks are talking about new world. So many folks are talking about revolution, revolt. There's an absolute conflict of power that is permeating our culture at present. And the astrology, in its beautiful way, is mirroring that conflict. So as we move into August, there is going to be a square. So a right angle, if you recall, is pressure dynamic between Saturn and Jupiter. It's going to become exact in August. Now, this story began in 2020. So if we sort of rewind and move our minds back to 2020, we recall a moment when Saturn and Jupiter came together. And so that's sort of beginning this cycle. There was a moment where Saturn and Pluto also came together too. So what I'm feeling with all of this astrology and casting our mind back to 2020, and for the majority of that year, these power dynamics were at play. And we're sort of beginning our journey, our Saturnian, Jupiterian journey. These configurations between these two deities, and referring back to that mythology, they don't happen all of the time. And so this year has been marked with this moment. So if that's any consolation to you, just in the fact of giving this pressure or this dynamic some sense of context for you, if you've been worried about the state of the union, state of the world, then the best thing that I can find, that I can glean to do, is to read a book, is to take the moments of quiet, where you can find them, and find your own safety. Find techniques and rhythms for you that give this moment, this anxious heartbeat, some context. Now, looking back at that mythology and feeling the sort of clash of the titans, the sort of the overthrow of the old systems, thinking about Pluto and what that represents in the sign Aquarius. Also thinking that in September, Pluto will have moved back into Capricorn for its last dance. If you recall, I've been telling you that from September to December, Pluto will be in the sign of Capricorn at that 29th degree point where the moon is highlighting right now. I've been internalizing a lot of this conflict, and it's a bad habit. But it's also been constructive, because if the purpose of this technique is to give this a bit of context, it can also give this a bit of context too. There has been mind frames and ways of thinking and responses that have come up in me attached to safety, attached to nourishment, and attached to fear that I've really had to reckon with. That fever came at a moment where my body was like, okay, enough of here. Let's actually get back here. I'm going to make your body sick so the mind can stop for a second and all you can think about is healing. The anxiety internalized to a point where you feel solely responsible for everything, where conflict in your personal life becomes almost impossible to deal with because of the conflict on the outside and the conflict on the inside. This is all happening, this pressure between the old fear and the new leadership is something that I'd like you to meditate on at this full moon in particular, because to relate this conflict to your relationships as well might be triggering some things as well. The power that we have to move or redirect the pathways of our mind takes practice, and it takes a commitment that is ongoing. I think that I've fallen out of favor with some of my old coping mechanisms, and they've come back to reckon with me again. Old ways of thinking about my abilities or my wherewithal have come back, and it's up to me to embody the Jupiterian sense rather than the Saturnian impulse to control and to restrict. Now, when we think about Capricorn, the sign, and we look to the tarot, it's the devil that comes to say hello. So isn't that an incredible pictorial of that inner working, of that inner conflict? The moon at 29 degrees is highlighting the Four of Pentacles. And so there's something that looks like a resistance to letting go of old, well-trodden structures or pathways and systems. And so I'd encourage you at this full moon, Cancer rising, to see what grip you can release of things that feel like control, of things that feel like restriction. This journey with Saturn in Pisces is a long one. It won't release its grip until 2026. And for you, we think about the water sign relationship with Saturn. We think about help, perhaps, from your 9th house, which is where Saturn is right now, and perhaps a redirection or a reconfiguration of some of your spiritual practices. Perhaps there's been moments where you've found yourself slipping into the popular ideology of predicting doom with this sort of work. A lot of astrologers can get high on their own supply in some way of calling out the moment, and it sort of separates them from their empathy, I believe, in some sense. This is to give the moment context and to give you a sense of ownership over your own internal conflict. I've been doing a lot of work with Proserpina too. So we know the asteroid series. You know the asteroid series very well. And if you don't, we'll continue our journey with Ceres. Ceres is over in your 7th house at present to Cancer Rising. Ceres was the goddess of agriculture and the harvest. Ceres was a great feeder of the Olympian gods. And one of the stories is of Ceres and her daughter Proserpina, who was kidnapped and stolen by Pluto and taken to the underworld. And so there's a lot of language around the separation between mother and child. There's a lot of language around grief, around that separation. There's a lot of language around redemption and commitment to going to the underworld and to retrieving what was taken from us. Those stories are absolutely correct and true, and it's a great way to work with Ceres in your astrology, is to think about these topics, to think about your relationship with food too, and how complex that is. Also, we must give autonomy to the daughter, Proserpina, for she was not a victim through and through. Proserpina became the queen of the underworld. And so I have the Page of Pentacles here in representation. Sometimes the pages are called the princesses. And in some readings of the tarot, the Princess of Pentacles is mighty as Queen Proserpina of the underworld. There's a lot of imagery around poppies with Proserpina, for Ceres cried tears of poppies in the wheat fields in her grief. There's also a lot of imagery around pomegranates, for that was the food of the underworld that Proserpina ate, willingly, I might say. Proserpina and Pluto and Ceres made a pact that Ceres would have her daughter back for 6 months of the year, and then for the other 6 months, her responsibility as queen of the underworld took over. There's power in the darkness sometimes, Cancer Rising, as difficult as that is to hear and as frustrating as sometimes that is to hear. I've been grappling with that in my own journey, and I've been trying to emulate and embody a sense of power in that journey to the underworld. There will always be time for retrieval, and there will always be time to come back to something that feels like love. There's love to be found in the underworld too, though. Let's not forget that. Love is pain as well as it is pleasure. So I'm going to leave you with that, and I think that we actually might journey a little further with Proserpina in future readings, if that's okay with you. My study of the mythology and of the artwork and of the poetry of Proserpina is one of the reasons that I am recommitting to the darkness as well as to the light. It was something that came so naturally to me always since I was very young, very weird child. And in art that I've made over the years, my queen of the underworld, my darkness, was ever present, and I forgot for a time how beautiful she was. But perhaps she's coming back, and perhaps she can come back for you too. And remember that on both sides of that coin, of that polarity, there is strength and there is beauty. I'm going to leave you with a song, I think, Cancer Rising. I'll leave it in the description below. If you're still here with me, you can click the link and have a watch. It's a song called Proserpina by Wainwright. Her mother wrote the song and then sadly passed away very soon after. She only performed it once. And so Martha recorded the song and put it on her album, Come Back to Mama. I'll put the link in the description below. Perhaps you might want to listen to that at the full moon, and perhaps you can move forward with this newfound sense of autonomy and power and majesty when the going gets tough, when the darkness arrives. Thank you very much for being here with me, Cancer Rising. I truly appreciate your company. If you'd like me to read your birth chart, head to my website, umaruby.com. I will draw you one in my style and read it to you via Zoom. If you would like to support my work, you can head to buymeacoffee.com/umaruby, and you can subscribe to this channel, or you can put some money in the tip jar. I will be available for live readings for the next month. If you live in Melbourne town, you can stop by Muses of Mystery and I'll read your tarot face to face. 1 month only. Take care, Cancer Rising. I love you very much, and I'll see you very, very soon. Ta-da. Hello, Scorpio Rising. Welcome to your reading for the Capricorn full moon, happening very soon, this Sunday, the 21st of July at 8:19 p.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. I'm sorry I've been away, Scorpio Rising. I'm back. Here I am. It's been a very long, deep month for me. I got very sick at the beginning of it and couldn't do anything but take care of my other job is I take care of people's dogs. So I was dog sitting and being dutiful to a beautiful little angel called Stella, Stella for Star, and healing. I was incapacitated. And then that feeling sort of journeyed with me a little further than perhaps I thought that it would. The topic around retrieval from the underworld is hot on my mind. So we might be journeying pretty deep with this reading, Scorpio Rising. If that's not for you, then that's okay. You can click out and I'll see you next time. But I'm looking at this astrology and I'm looking at the lunations that I missed to share with you. And I'm also looking at some of the astrology that has just occurred and how that may have affected your birth chart. So Mars, the planet, can represent our rage, can't it? It can represent our valor, our bravery. It can definitely represent our anger. Mars is one of the planets that guides you along, Scorpio Rising. It's your guiding light in some sense. And so when thinking about Mars and thinking about the power that it can imbue your persona, your being, your spirit, when a planet is in opposition to the sign where it's most comfortable, things can falter or things can short circuit. There's something about a scrabbling back for control that we can feel. So on your birth chart, Scorpio is your first house and Taurus is your 7th house. Scorpio, the self. Taurus, the other. And so on the 16th of July, Mars made an exact conjunction with Uranus, the planet of revolt and revolution and unexpectedness. And so Mars in its desperation came into contact with Uranus, but also they were in conjunction with a fixed star in our stratosphere. It's called Algol, and it has direct correlation to the mythology of Medusa. And so what I'm looking at in this astrology feels quite tense, and it feels quite explosive. What I'd like to journey with at the beginning of this reading is the mythology around Medusa and how we can perhaps reconfigure that for you and how we can provide a sense of redemption in some way. The figure of Medusa permeates culture, doesn't it? It's a ghoul, you know. Medusa was a demon. The fixed star Algol, which represents the head of Medusa, is sometimes called the demon star. Now, the mythology of it all is that Medusa was one of the most beautiful women that graced the pantheon, and she was violated. She was invaded by someone else. And there's a great retelling of this mythology because in some versions of the story, it was Athena that was responsible for placing the curse on Medusa and turning her beautiful hair to snakes and her gaze into something that would turn men to stone. Nikita Gill retells the story, and it's a story of protection rather than condemnation. As a sister, she was trying to protect Medusa in the best way that she could. With her power, she turned her into something that was ferocious so that her trauma may never happen again. And this is what I'd like to work with in this reading. This configuration between Mars and Uranus happened on the 16th of this month, so a few days earlier than you might be watching this. And also we're moving into a space that feels further, it sort of highlights further this violence, this predominantly patriarchal violence that we've all become so exhausted by. So looking at your seventh house and looking at this combat, this combustion, this severity, I hope that you have some feeling of hope for some aftercare. If there was huge blow-ups with folks that you cared about, or perhaps there was huge recollections in your mind of the way that your seventh house has been in its own sort of sense or own form of revolution, and you lashed out, you used angry words, then hopefully this reading can give you the opportunity, if you feel that you need to make reparations for that, or express the idea that you were doing the best that you could with what you had, and that moving forward you will, moving forward you'll maintain a sense of responsibility about the way that you express yourself. Back to the moon. This moon is the second full moon in Capricorn of this year. I missed out on the 22nd of June because I was very unwell. But on your birth chart, Scorpio Rising, Capricorn represents the third house, which in Hellenistic astrology was called the house of the goddess. It was a space of private ritual and of healing modalities that had a lot to do with language and learning through storytelling and language. And so this full moon now is at the 29th degree of Capricorn, so it's quite a pivotal moment. It's in a conjunction with Pluto in your fourth house in Aquarius, which is at 0 degrees. Different signs, but you can see they're right together, both at very pivotal moments on the zodiac. And so I'd like for you to use this moment, use this moon to go deep with your healing practices in privacy. Go deep with the things that give you comfort, that provide you with a sense of peace. Go deep with your exploratory journey in the library or with the tarot or with the astrology. I'd recommend that you ease up on things that feel like prediction, because sometimes using astrology as a tool for self-acceptance, as Chani Nicholas says, through and through, but sometimes this technique can be seductive and it can have folks obsessively journey back to the past to see what is correlating with the future and to try and predict fated moments. And the empathy of it all can sometimes fall off, and the healing of it all can sometimes fall off because it creates greater anxiety, and there's a sort of foreboding, there's a doom that can feel inevitable, coupled with the fact that culturally we seem to be in a moment where astrology, mythology, divination or not, there is a lot of prediction of the worst that permeates the culture at present. Very atheist, pragmatic, realistic people are predicting terrible things. And that has no what I'm attempting to do, Scorpio Rising, is to find to whittle through and to try and find some context for this moment and for ourselves so that we can journey forward. Because I know full well what it feels like to be locked in place and to be stuck in that anxious body. The heart beats up into the throat, you know. There's a fear that is so palpable at present. And I'd like for you to, with the moon, seek out guidance that allows the body to recalibrate and to regulate. Seek out guidance that makes you feel a little better from listening to that guidance, rather than predicting the worst and putting the mathematical equations together to some sort of grand crescendo. That's not to discount anybody's research at all. In fact, I am with you on this, Scorpio. I really have found there's an obsessive side to the work that can keep you up at night and keep you tuned in. We need the empathy back. We need the love back. If not for everyone, then at least for ourselves. So Capricorn and you are going to make a pact this full moon, Scorpio Rising. You're going to recognize that the sign can represent all manner of different hierarchical structures. We can also recognize that Capricorn represents a beautiful moment of determination, of enlightenment, and then a responsibility to share that with other folks as well. It's an ongoing process. Read, journey, meditate, try and ease up a little bit on the fated prophecy of it all. Does that make sense? I hope so. The new moon that I missed was in Cancer on the 6th of July, and that was a opportunity for you to sow a seed insofar as the way that you relate to your spirituality and the way that you wish to learn about your own sense of soul. So hopefully we can carry that intention through. We're moving into a place that does feel like the clash of the titans. Saturn and Jupiter are on the warpath, as it were. And there is going to be a continual fight for power. There's going to be a continual forceful grip that we can feel. What we've got to reconcile with ourselves is what's the alternative. It can't be the same, but just a different colour. We have to really think about the way that we structure our own life and our own sense of belonging in community and our own sense of responsibility to the welfare of the health of the planet and also the health of ourselves. What's so fascinating sometimes for me is that the internal struggle, the way that we talk and treat ourselves, can sometimes be projected out into the waking world. And we can see that tension in our environment, and it's reflective of the tension inside. Look at this one. It's the Justice card, if you can see that. Jupiter in Gemini has been doing its work. Jupiter in Gemini has been exacerbating an internal dialogue for quite a few of us. Jupiter in Gemini has been like a ping pong match in the mind. I'm not sure about you. There have been many, many mornings where I've woken up mid-conversation and where I have had to actively tell my mind to shut it off. And that works for a couple of minutes, and then unconsciously it starts again. If that's been your experience, Scorpio Rising, I'm with you, and it takes practice and it takes commitment to slowing that down. It takes real intention, and that word can be bandied around so quickly these days. Set your intention. It takes work to set an intention. It takes work to find yourself out of the mind and back into the physical self. I'm not holding anything against you as far as anxiety or as far as internal struggle or internal battle, particularly with all of this rageful conflict in the 7th house just recently. What I am hopefully reminding you is that it is a practice that you can engage in, and that if your mind has been overactive to a point of mania, then I am with you on that, and I understand that now is the time to actively practice something like mindfulness, something like meditation. Perhaps if you can afford it, it might be time to enter into a healthy relationship with a talk therapist, because all of the talking on the inside can sort of sometimes lead to nowhere. It can become an echo chamber to a point that is really debilitating health-wise. Ultimately, at the center of all of this discussion that's been going on has been a driving force that's pointing us in the direction of something that hopefully feels like justice. We think about the eclipses in Libra that we're moving into now as the year goes on, and we were reminded of last year and the tumult that the eclipses earmarked or punctuated. I could only imagine that the rest of this year feels like trepidation. And so especially at this time, Scorpio Rising, I'd love for you to nourish yourself. This full moon is in the 3rd house of the goddess, which to me sounds and feels like nourishment. I think about all of the different rituals and different healing modalities that we're only coming back to now, and that some still will scoff at in a light-hearted way, and some still too truly believe are something evil. Capricorn in tarot is the devil card, Scorpio Rising. And it's not something that is a malevolent force out to get you. It's something that exists inside each and every single one of us. It's a moment of audience. We sit with our devils from time to time, and we feel the weight of the chains that we've put on ourselves. And the devil asks us if we're happy or not. Hopefully we can take that jewelry off. Maybe we need to wear it for a time further. But in any event, nothing is going to harm you if you reach out to the goddess. And there's multiple, plural, goddesses. Journey with them, Scorpio Rising. And thank you for journeying with me at this time. That's all I have to say on that. Enjoy the full moon as much as you can, my darling. I'll be with you and we'll speak about the Leo new moon as time goes on. If you'd like me to read your birth chart, head to my website, umaruby.com, and I'll draw you one in my style, and we'll make an appointment on Zoom and I'll read it to you. If you'd like to support my work, you can head to buymeacoffee.com/umaruby and put some money in the tip jar, or subscribe for 10 Australian dollars a month. If you'd like a live reading with me for the next month, I'll be on Sundays at Muses of Mystery in the city, so you can make an appointment through them and I'll read for your cards face to face if that's something that you'd like to do. Take very good care of yourself, Scorpio Rising. I love you lots, and I'll be speaking to you soon. Go gently with this journey, this darkness. It's valuable if we can find the gold. Hello Pisces Rising, welcome to your reading for the Capricorn full moon happening very soon, this Sunday the 21st of July at 8:19 p.m. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me, hi, how are you? Sorry I've been gone. I got very, very sick for the last month, and I'm so sorry that I have been incommunicado, but there was something about the fever that took hold of my body which occurred at the last full moon that I had to go with. And I think that it was telling me something. I think that all of my advice about getting out of the mind and back into the body, I wasn't taking. I was dishing it out, but I wasn't taking it. And my mind, my overactive Gemini moon, became so conflicted and concerned that my body was like, enough of that. And I became feverish. I was so sick. I dropped my phone on the train too, so it was just a disaster. You know, my livelihood was down the drain. However, that trip to the underworld was fruitful. And I think that it's an ongoing thing. And there's more to discover and to explore about what lays beneath. However, that's true in one hand. On the other hand, there is a conflict and a battle that we can really feel in the astrology that feels like a fight for supremacy, which can be maddening too. So we know that Pisces Rising has been dealing with the journey of Saturn since 2023, and it won't let up until 2026. This is important work that Pisces Rising needs to do. It has a lot to do with restriction and a container. Think about the planet Saturn and its emblem. What it represents in the visual sense is rings, restriction. There's something about karmic retribution that we can talk about with Saturn too, if you'd like. There's something about responsibility, and there's something about a lesson that is to be learned. So to have Saturn traveling through Pisces, the first house on your birth chart, the house of the self, could feel like an ever restricted stopgap. All roads lead to nowhere, and computer says no. That could be something that you're feeling. Saturn is not in such a bad condition in Pisces, though. There could be opportunity to work with this. This clash of the powers that be. We can speak to Jupiter as well in Gemini. So this is your fourth house, Pisces Rising, the root of the chart, your home, your ancestry, your family. And so Jupiter has been expanding upon these topics and highlighting them. Now Jupiter is in a sign that it is not comfortable. Jupiter rules your sign. Jupiter rules Sagittarius. And so in those two signs, there's a great optimism and there's a great encouragement to move forward and to learn and to understand. In the opposite sign of Sagittarius is Gemini, and this is where Jupiter is. This is what I can glean, is that overactive mind, the conversation internally that won't let up. If you've been waking up and you've been finding yourself in mid-conversation, or if you've been so unable to exist in the moment, if every move that you've made, you've just been waiting to get to the end. What will bring me happiness here? What will bring me comfort? I don't know. This is something that we could speak about with Gemini and with Jupiter co-present in that sign. We can also speak about, at this full moon, the idea that Mars will have just entered Gemini too. So on the 16th of July, Mars made a very robust and stark conjunction with Uranus in Taurus at 26 degrees. And the revolutionary violence that was obvious has shaken a lot of folks. And I've found it quite confronting to absorb a lot of the astrological language around such a moment. And I've found the hunger to predict quite confronting. I feel now that Jupiter is kind of beckoning to Mars in Gemini. We've got to mind our words. We've got to mind the rage that is permeating with Mars. Mars can sometimes represent our rage. It can represent our bravery. It can also represent our rage. We've got to reconcile that, because Saturn is still in Pisces, and so we know that a right angle is a square aspect, pressure, conflict. So Saturn and Jupiter will be moving into an exact square in August. Mars is stirring some things up as well. I like to think of the mythology when I think of this story with Jupiter and with Saturn. I like to think about the painting by Goya. I don't know if you know it. It's called Saturn Eating His Children, or Saturn Eating His Son. It's really confronting, but it references the mythology. Saturn was one of the Titan gods, the king of the Titan gods, the old guard before the Olympians took power. And there was a prophecy told to Saturn that his children would overthrow him, and so he ate them all so that wouldn't happen. The painting depicts a really pathetic but ferocious, grotesque moment of Saturn eating his children. Jupiter was saved by his mother and kept away on a mountaintop, and when he came of age, he came back for retribution and forced Saturn to vomit up all of his children, and then the Olympians took power. So Jupiter, Aphrodite or Venus, Ceres, the lot, Pluto, Neptune, everyone, the gods that we're working with now. That story feels really present in our culture at the moment, doesn't it? And when we look out, we must look in, and I've been doing a lot of that. My old fear, I am exhausted by. Saturn in Pisces is highlighting my old fear, and Saturn in Pisces is also enforcing structure to my life. Sometimes the way that I think about myself is on the basis of a long story of distrust, either with my abilities or my focus, my ability to focus. Jupiter in Gemini is exacerbating that quality right now too. And so outwards we can look and we can feel and we can see, and folks are talking about a lot of new world prophecies and the crumbling of society as it stands. We feel the polarity of our culture, and we don't know who to trust, and all of these different emotions are running around in the outside world. The astrology merely mirrors that. If we get the microscope out, we can recognize that conflict and that burden inside too, Pisces rising. We can recognize how that has been affecting the way that we relate to ourselves as well. So this square that is coming up, and it's not until August, but it feels pertinent to talk about it now. This is the clash of the Titans. As it stands, Saturn is on your home base in first house. So what can you tell me about your education around structure and boundary and commitment? And what is Jupiter exacerbating in Gemini, in your fourth house, in your mind, in your mental faculty. Because there's a paradox that's occurring here with this astrology and in the internal workings of it. We want to kick back against the old world, set ourselves free, release ourselves perhaps from the chains that bind us. And this is where Capricorn in this full moon is really emanating its tarot symbology. So the full moon in Capricorn that's coming up is going to be triggering the Devil card and also the Four of Pentacles, which looks like a chokehold, doesn't it? It looks like a conviction to hanging on to what has gone before. And so if we're kicking back and kicking back and kicking back against that, but also in tandem wanting to release ourselves to get back to the way that things used to be or the way that our lives used to exist, or if we've got rose-tinted glasses for the past and disallowing ourselves enjoyment of the present, it's a paradox. You can't have one without the other. If the old world is crumbling and the old ways of being are falling away, you've got to give away a little piece of yourself too. Hopefully the piece that you give away from yourself, Pisces Rising, is that insistence on delusion in the nostalgia of life. As it stands, we are coming together as a group of kind people that are feeling the pressure. And we engage with our tarot cards and with the astrology, as Chani Nicholas says, to give our lives some sense of context in this moment. The astrology doesn't have things happen. The days of prophecies perhaps are over. For some, not for all. What are we giving away at this time? Capricorn and this full moon are lighting up your 11th house of your sense of kinship and friendship and your humanitarian spirit. So what are you releasing in those topics? And what are you denying or ignoring that actually exists for you in that house right now? This huge metamorphosis that has been occurring for so many of us. We've got to remember what we have rather than lament what has passed us by or slipped through our fingers. If the old world is crumbling, so too is the old version of yourself, Pisces Rising. We'll see how this square between the patriarchy plays out on the world stage, but we've got to bring it back to the internal mechanism too. I've been spending a lot of time with Proserpina in my journey to the underworld, through my feverish state into something that felt like another trip to the underworld for me after the fact. And a lot of this advice that I'm giving you has been what I discovered in that journey too. In the astrology, we might look to the asteroid Ceres to discover some of this, and we can also look to the asteroid Proserpina. There is one. It was discovered in 1856 and has a very strange orbit with Ceres. At some points, every 8-ish years, they come together, but then they separate. And so Proserpina is the daughter of Ceres, Ceres being the queen of agriculture and the harvest and of feeding. And Proserpina, or Persephone as the Greeks said, being the child, the maiden child of spring, but then who was abducted by Pluto and became the queen of the underworld. I've had to remember Proserpina's autonomy in this story, for she ate the pomegranate seeds, and then a deal was struck that Ceres could have her, the mother could have her child back for 6 months of the year, but then for the other 6 months of the year, her responsibility lay as queen of the underworld. There's beauty in the darkness to Pisces Rising, as difficult as that can sometimes be to reconcile. In these moments of internal quiet, in the dank, in the dark, there is beauty to be found. And so hopefully with Proserpina as our guardian, we can journey with some of that darkness. The asteroid Ceres, the mother, came into an exact conjunction with Pluto, the abductor, at the same time with Saturn, the boundary. And this happened in January of 2020. And it seems kind of cliche to recall what we were going through in 2020 as far as restriction, containership, boundary, health, all of these things. But Ceres, the asteroid, takes 4.5 years to go around the zodiac. And so coming up this December, Ceres will conjoin with Pluto once more at 0 degrees of Aquarius, which is where Pluto is right now, in conjunction, different signs, but very close by to the moon. And so all of these topics around displacement or around commitment to a new way of being, around your sense of belonging in a community, this search for looking for your people, I'd highly encourage you to open your eyes and to look around at who is existing in your life right here, right now. I'd encourage you to go inward for a time if you can, Pisces Rising. I'd encourage you to remember that your darkness is beautiful as much as the light is. And I'd really encourage you to move with these mythologies and these stories and recognize that Proserpina has a voice as well. The queen of the underworld has a lot to teach us about the beauty of these moments. I don't know what else to say. The Tower, the Nine of Swords, the King of Swords. Journey deep. Journey deep, Pisces Rising. I feel you. I feel this frustration. This is a Gemini. This is Mars in Gemini. This is the emblem of Mars in Gemini, this card. I feel the frustration. I feel the exhaustion that's rolling through your ecosystem, the frustration of the mind, the continual conversations, the chatter going over and over and over, the worry and the fear and the paranoia about impending doom. Mars, clarity and conviction in the King of Swords. The power of the mind, the power of the body. I'd like for you to write down who is in your community right now. When it comes to friendship and a sense of belonging, write down who exists in your world right now, rather than who did before or who you haven't met yet. Even if it's one person, doesn't matter. You are doing such brilliant work, Pisces Rising. But when the going gets tough, you can't disappear. You can't press the ejector button and run away continually. Perhaps Saturn is teaching you a great lesson around boundaries, absolutely. But if this moon is highlighting something about your humanitarian spirit and your sense of belonging in a community, it's also a reminder that we need you. So don't run away from this that feels like some sort of golden responsibility. Use your magic. Use the boundary, the container, to finesse. It's nice to be expressive and dynamic and available and free-flowing, a free spirit. It's also really great to be relied upon and to be present and to be structured and grounded. If Capricorn can teach us anything, it's that. We've got so much to discuss, Pisces Rising, moving forward. I am so proud of you for sticking it out and for being here and for recommitting to the ritual. Much love to you, Pisces Rising. If you're still here with me, can you please send me some love in the comments? I haven't asked anyone yet. Damn it, doesn't matter. But I'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like me to read your birth chart, they look something like this. So I'll draw you one and we can make an appointment via Zoom and I'll read it to you over the internet. If you'd like to support my work, you can put some money in the tip jar at buymeacoffee.com/Imaruby. If you'd like a live reading, I will be available for the next month. I'm doing some drop-in sessions at a shop called Muses of Mystery in the Nicholas Building in the city of Melbourne. So Sundays, if you're around, make an appointment through them. I'll put the link in the description too. Much love to you, Pisces Rising. This is a grand recommitment ceremony that we're entering into, and there's appropriate strategies and ways of going about that. I hope you're not bored by this. I know that I am wanting to get out of my seat and slap myself in the face, but I believe it to be true. What's happening around in the world outside is being mirrored about what's happening internally here. And there's something about growing up that needs to happen in this configuration. There's also something about standing free of the old fear. So let's do it together. Take good care. I love you.